The African Technology Policy Studies Network, ATPS, is a transdisciplinary network of researchers, policymakers, private sector actors, and the civil society that promotes the generation, dissemination, use and mastery of science, technology and innovation, STI, for African development, environmental sustainability, and global inclusion. In collaboration with other like-minded institutions, ATPS provides platforms for collaborative and innovative policy research to support African governments and STI institutions or stakeholders to build necessary knowledge conditions and infrastructures, policies and incentives, and capabilities for STI knowledge generation, brokerage, circulation, and socialization to ensure effective valorization and commercialization of scientific and indigenous knowledge into new technologies and innovations for sustainable development on the continent. To date, the ATPS has over 1,500 members and 3,000 stakeholders in over 51 countries in 5 continents with institutional partnerships worldwide. We implement our programs through members in national chapters established in 30 countries, 27 in Africa, and 3 diaspora chapters in the Australia, United States of America, and United Kingdom, with its secretariat in Nairobi, Kenya. The Science Granting Council's initiative in Sub-Saharan Africa, SGCI, a 5-year program running from 2015 to 2020, is a multi-funder initiative that aims to strengthen the capacities of 15 science granting councils in Sub-Saharan Africa in order to support research and evidence-based policies that will contribute to economic and social development in Africa. The initiative is jointly funded by the United Kingdom Department for International Development, DFID, Canada's International Development Research Centre, IDRC, South Africa's National Research Foundation, NRF, and the Swedish International Development Cooperation Agency, SIDA. The SGCI theme on networking Africa's SGCs is being implemented by the African Technology Policy Studies Network, ATPS, in partnership with the Sinovent Center. SGCI convenes annual forums that bring together the initiative's 15 participating councils along with other key stakeholders from around the world to deliberate and develop interventions in strategic areas of interest to the councils and the wider science, technology, and innovation community. The 2019 annual forum was held in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, hosted by the Tanzania Commission for Science and Technology, COSTECH, in partnership with the African Technology Policy Studies Network, ATPS, and the Sinovent Center, with the theme being Open Science in Research and Innovation for Development. In the introduction of the session on Open Science in Research and Innovation for Development, Day 2, at the SGCI Annual Forum, Dr. Nicholas Ozo, the ATPS Executive Director, had this to say.
Today, we are going to have another masterclass on Open Science in Research and Innovation for Development. You may ask, how do we choose these topics? The masterclass that we present every year usually are outcomes or output from the science granting councils themselves, interacting and trying to put forward an issue relating to science, technology, and innovation that is topical, that they want to learn more about, that they want to discuss about, that they want to get more information on, so as to foster their mandate. And we know that the science granting councils are establishments of the law in most countries in the national science system, whose roles mainly are for research funding, for quality assurance, they perform policy advice, knowledge exchange, and also in capacity building and training within their national research system. So, within these roles, they identify topical issues that might be of importance to them. So we discuss with them, we interact with them, we collaborate with them to identify these topics before they are presented. When we choose a particular topic, what next do? We engage with the experts and professionals in the field within and outside Africa to ensure that we get the best brains that we discuss and provide information around this thematic area. And it is in that process that we trying to get the best, that we always get the best. Today, for the topic in question, open science, we moved across the world and we were able to get the best team that put themselves together to present this paper, this masterclass paper.
Other speakers, Makenya Maboko from COSTECH Tanzania and Dr. Eunice Muthengi from East African Research Hub, UK Department for International Development, also spoke and had this to say.
Well, I hope this masterclass today will, last speaker, make a survey and poll people, inform people. So I hope that the masterclass that we're going to listen to this morning will equilibrate the temperature. We're researchers. We don't want a road to be very hot on one end and very cold on the other end. We want all to have more or less similar temperature. So I hope this masterclass will make us all come to a shared understanding, a shared appreciation of what open science is all about. I believe of very good speakers. We shall have fruitful discussion. At the end of the day, we, as part of the fraternity of granting councils, will have a better appreciation of open source of science and will be good advocates of the same. Let me end my remarks by once again apologizing for having been late. Thank you very much.
So we recognize that open access is only one small part of open science. There are definitely other aspects that we need to consider, but at least we're making some progress on that. The paper that we'll be reviewing today and discussing raises some really important questions. What's the role for science granting councils in fostering open science in Africa? What are some of the pros and cons of open science? Does it increase marginalization or does it bridge the divide? How do we ensure that open science benefits excluded groups? These are the questions we're here to tackle today. And it looks like, since most of you, those who are lukewarm and those who are cold, I hope you've come with a lot of questions, and I hope you ask those questions. And I hope by the end of the day you feel you start to get some answers to those questions. And speaking for DFID and other funders, we're really looking to you as science granting councils to set the direction of travel on open science and show us the direction of travel for Africa so that we can then continue to look at our policies and look at our procedures to make sure that they're supporting that vision. So thank you.
Godfrey Bolton from University of Edinburgh, Scotland, and Joseph Mwelwa from Joint Minds Consulting, Botswana, presented a masterclass paper on open science in research and innovation for development.
Today, we've benefited from machine learning. It's in transport, it's in public it's in public administration, it's in the way in which banking transactions take place. It's almost ubiquitous. And the more quickly we in science recognize the ubiquity of its power, the better. Open science isn't new, but it's taken on a new form because of this extraordinary digital revolution. And what it is rather beautifully expressed at the top here by George Bernard Shaw, an Irish playwright. If you have an apple, and I have an apple, and we exchange these apples, then you and I will still have only one apple. If you have an idea, and I have an idea, we exchange these ideas, then each of us will have 2 ideas. It's not an arithmetic process, it's an aggregate cumulative process. And translating that into terms of open science, which is fundamentally about sharing, it's a means of deploying a collective intelligence, in gaining understanding and in addressing fundamental issues for human society. In its simplest terms, it has three pillars. They can be complicated, but let's keep it simple. Open data, releasing your data so others are able to use it in a form that's usable. Open access publication, openly releasing your results so they can be read by anyone who wishes to benefit from it. And also open to society. That last one has become increasingly obvious and increasingly important. For 2 fundamental reasons. That knowledge, science, if you like, by economic definition, is a public good. It's only a public good when it's released into society rapidly and in a comprehensible form. Now, most science isn't released into society in a comprehensible form. It's incomprehensible jargon, often mathematically expressed in ways that my neighbours certainly couldn't use, even if it were of potential value to them. One of the things we've learned, that if we want science to benefit society in the way that it should, there has to be positive mutual engagement with society. And indeed, many domains of public policy which have been informed by science fail to have the impact they should, primarily because we scientists and politicians talk down to society and don't realise that most social attitudes are determined by passion and rather than by reason.
We need to make sure that we beat what is called post-truth, and I think, Geoffrey, you talked about how the internet is being used to spread lies. 2 weeks ago, I was frustrated because when I went on the social media, one of the phenomena that is hitting Africa is this onset of what are called prophets. The prophets. And the prophet would broadcast on social media a prediction about a country. That country is not going to succeed. And you look at this guy is just... And I said to myself, where is the science? Because the science needs to start countering such falsehood. But the propensity of technology is that it's going to enable falsehood to be sprayed on the open infrastructure systems if science does not come at the defense of these areas. We're going to look at the principles that will govern knowledge, and the knowledge needs to be accessible and compressible to all wishing it. Scientists must publish evidence in the fullest way for any published claim. And this is what we're trying to say to all the scientists in Africa. I'm going to look at the open science practices. And what I'm going to do in this very next slide very quickly is to just give you case examples of some of anecdotal evidence of open science practices in Africa. And one of them is Ethiopia that launched their open data, open access policy, where all the universities in Ethiopia are going to enable open access to all the research that is funded by the public to be freely available to all. Tanzania has got initiatives on open science, and they are also working with DLab, and that is an initiative to look at that is promoting open science. South Africa has got an open science policy, and also is very big in terms of research data management. The SK the Square Kilometre Array is one of the opportunities that's going to power open science. Botswana launched its Open Data, Open Science Forum, that allows interaction between government and stakeholders in promoting open science.
After the masterclass presentation, there were discussions on open science in research and development, SGCs, perspectives and responses, facilitated by Teboho Moja from New York University, USA.
Open science experience of Zimbabwe within the context of the GRC and Science Granting Council's initiative. The GRC, Global Research Council, and the Science Granting Councils are strong proponents of open science. In 2018, you might recall that at our annual general meeting like this one, Science Granting Councils made a statement on commitment to support and advocate the development and use of open science platforms to transformative scale, number one. Number two, with respect to development of human capacity. Number three, with respect to investing in infrastructure.
Le concept d'open science est relativement nouveau dans notre pays. La diffusion des savoirs se fait encore de manière traditionnelle par le biais de publications scientifiques dans les revues spécialisées réservées à une élite. Même les communications scientifiques sont faites par les chercheurs pour leurs collègues chercheurs. Pour nos chercheurs, ce qui est déterminant, c'est la reconnaissance académique par les pairs. Ainsi, dans la perspective de promouvoir la science ouverte dans la recherche et le développement en Côte d'Ivoire, le PASRES pourrait, en premier temps, travailler à la mise en place d'un écosystème compatible au système d'open science.
Open science also allows universal access to scientific knowledge and enhances development so far that be possible. The FNE has initiated to request abstracts in English, as I said, to our funding proposals. And we also finance the publication of papers that are mostly in English. So the challenge that we saw under this linguistic issue will be to promoting the principles for open science, raising awareness of all stakeholders, drivers, researchers, editors, students, and the public in general, creation of sustainable and collaborative repositories, as well as consolidating Portuguese and English languages as language of science in the world. And we would like to be part of this change.
Donc, le fonds RIT, en tant que SGC pour le Burkina, entend exploiter pleinement donc l'opportunité de Open Science, donc la science ouverte, les données ouvertes, pour jouer vraiment pleinement de sa position et appuyer tous les processus de mise en commun et de partage ces données-là pour renforcer la connaissance, l'information et l'utilisation des données par la communauté nationale.
Alfred Sumani from National Council for Science and Technology, Zambia, moderated the open discussions on the masterclass presentation.
I would like to ask the audience now to participate. Clarifications, comments, views. The countries that are participating, Malawi, Ethiopia, Rwanda, can you come out and clarify a few issues that have been raised regarding your countries? So who's going first?
The discussion that we've had is about science. And my understanding that this is a more formalized science that can easily be externalized and then integrated in the open science system. Now, how can open science facilitate the externalization of very useful knowledge that our communities have used to survive in terms of health, in terms of climate adaptation. I would very much love to hear some comment about that. Thank you very much.
So my take is that in addition to the policy intervention that Joseph was mentioning and proposing, I want to propose that we need to look into that economic aspect of knowledge as both the public and private good, and therefore put in place incentive mechanisms within our policies that incentivize private and public production of this knowledge on a sustainable basis within the open science era. Thank you very much.
For me, that's just science talking to itself. It's not open in any reasonable definition of the word. But actually, if you have a proper, well-designed open system that's open to society, there's absolutely no reason why it should be open and accessible to indigenous folk, like my family, as long as they've got a smartphone, and most of them have. And I think one of the strengths that you should try to deploy is to make the African definition of open science broader. I mean, Susan mentioned that this is fast moving, and you must take the long term. And I think one of the questions is, are there ways in which you don't play catch up, but you leapfrog? And it seems to me opening it to society in a more fundamental way is a social way of leapfrogging. It may not necessarily be very powerful for economies, but society does matter.
You see, opening science, opening the scientific process requires other steps to be taken. For instance, we will need new incentives and incentive systems to be able to support the opening of scientific. If I'm a scientist, and I know that my promotion is premised on how many papers I have, am I going to really, what is the incentive for me to be able to share my data so that somebody else can publish it before I do? So you see, the whole system, it requires a more systemic approach to changing the entire system if we really want to achieve this objective. So it is just a question. I mean, I like the idea and I benefit from it, but I just want to caution that it is a fairly complex situation.
Day 3 of the Forum SGCI workshop on monitoring, evaluation and learning saw the African Technology Studies Network participate in the WorldCaps together with other collaborative technical agencies. The aim was to show key outcomes and lessons learned in SGCI implementation. ATPS Executive Director Dr. Nicholas Ozo led the team, which included Ruth Oriama, Research Officer, and Felix Musila, Communication and Outreach Officer, in taking the delegates through the session using visual aids.
Like I mentioned, my presentation is in two forms, and I've just given you a snapshot in terms of combining what we've been able to get from the various books, and of course what we are currently doing in terms of consolidating everything together for us to be able to come up with the phase 2 overall report. But then the next slide is actually be looking at what exactly will be the role of the Science Granting Council when it comes to monitoring, evaluation, and learning. How do we improve our approach to M&E moving forward? So as we continue, we need to also have cognizance of the assumptions that we are making moving forward, because those also affect in terms of how we adapt and acquire the skills that we gain.
After presentations, discussions followed on looking forward by SGCs where participants were involved.
I was wondering whether there are going to be fundamental changes in that thorough change that we started with in SGCI 1 when we move on to the second phase of the project. And if there are any changes, what they will be and how they will affect the project going forward.
And the idea of country-specific theory of change, which I also like to refer to as nested theory of change, because it's nested to the overall theory of change, is to help us harmonize our thinking in terms of what we want to achieve in a country. To help us to coordinate. You know, we have various CTAs, each implementing various thematic areas, but all these thematic areas are actually interlinked. So the theory of change helps us to bring together thinking at a country level, contextualized thinking. And we keep talking about contextualized approach to things. So I think the nested country theory of change will help us to get there in terms of looking at a particular country and see what does this particular thematic area mean in this particular country moving forward.
I noticed there was something about institution versus researchers. I just want to know what brought this on. Is it country specific? Why is it there? What was the basis of putting it on the theory of change?
So if I can give an example, with us in South Africa, I'm putting my NRF South Africa hat on. What we usually do is that we work directly with the universities, and after the entire review of proposals for the year has been done, we provide all the money to the university in the beginning of the year in what we call a grant deposit. And then the university is able to manage everything grants management oriented on all of the different projects, instead of the individual researchers having to rely on us as the institution to do that work. And so it helps us to just engage with the universities on that level. That's what was meant by that point.
There's our colleagues from University College London and University of Rwanda who are also interacting with you on conducting the case studies. And sometimes this could appear to be overwhelming. So one is that for us to be able to understand the environment that we're working with, sometimes these surveys become necessary. But that doesn't mean that we want to overwhelm you. We have taken that comment and we will coordinate this better moving forward.
The participating science granting councils were Kenya, Ethiopia, Rwanda, Tanzania, Uganda, Botswana, Malawi, Mozambique, Namibia, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Burkina Faso, Ghana, Senegal, and Cote d'Ivoire.